Hey, Huber.
What's up?
So I like computer role-playing games. You like computer role-playing games.
Yes.
When you can find time to play them. I understand. It's a big commitment.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of exciting stuff happening with computer role-playing games, and I got to see some of that at E3.
Yeah.
And I want to talk to you about it.
Okay, I want to listen. I want to hear.
I really think you don't know anything about this first game. This is called Pathfinder Kingmaker.
Yeah.
But I think there are things about it that are really going to excite you. So Pathfinder, it's a tabletop role playing game. It's its own rule set, very similar to Dungeons and Dragons 3.5.
Mm-hmm.
But there's this Kingmaker module which they're using for Pathfinder Kingmaker. Owlcat Games is making it. Plays very similar to Pillars of Eternity.
Okay.
To old Infinity Engine games, if you're used to that.
Yeah.
Chris Avallone, famous computer role-playing game writer, has worked on many things, is doing some narrative design for it as well.
Cool.
But the Kingmaker part of Pathfinder Kingmaker is what's so essential.
Yeah.
Because you get to make your own character, and then you get to be either a baron or baroness, and you get to basically slowly build out your kingdom. In addition to going on adventures and doing stuff like that.
I just want to talk to the Baron.
Yeah. And so what you're doing...
Is this a single-player game?
Yeah, it's a single-player game.
Okay, so you're making your own campaign for yourself?
You're going through a campaign, but... like a lot of these games, how you build your character, what you say in dialogue, how you build out your kingdom is going to influence how the story comes out.
Cool.
But you are essentially encountering things in a linear fashion, but within that linear fashion, there's a bunch of deviations that you can take. Mm-hmm. And what's cool is you start out building your kingdom, and you are positioning guards, and when you leave your kingdom, your whole party can't come with you at any given time. And your party, some of them will be evil, some of them will be good, and depending on who you leave in charge of your kingdom, like let's say you want to be evil, let's say you want to rule these lands with an iron fist, and then you leave a bunch of good guys in charge of your kingdom when you're going out adventuring. You might come back and it's like, hey, we did a bunch of good things because that's within our alignment. Yeah. And so that's something you have to consider as well. And it starts out, it seems like, with fairly simple decisions, but slowly you'll build your own towns, essentially, that you can use and things like that. Another thing is that as your kingdom grows in prominence, different factions from around the world will come. Some will request aid, some will want to attack you and take you over, and so you'll have to defend your kingdom as well.
Sounds like Civilization meets Pillars of Eternity or
Divinity
or something.
In Pillars of Eternity, building up your stronghold was a big deal, and you had choices that you could make with that. This seems like a much more expanded version of that.
Cool.
From what I've seen in the alpha build that I've played, this was successfully funded on Kickstarter, and I only saw a very, very, very early build of it. Like I said, I don't get any sort of, I don't want to mislead people. It's not Civilization.
Yeah.
It's not that sort of interface. You're doing it within this sort of Infinity Engine style of gameplay where you're talking to people and that's how you're making decisions. Cool. But I could be wrong. Maybe they'll change that over time, but I didn't get that sense in the build that I saw. But the actual game itself seems really interesting too, going out and adventuring and doing things, because there was this cart, essentially this gnome cart, and it was completely broken down, and what you could do is you could make a choice, like using your brute strength trying to save the cart, but you could also go out and find pieces of the cart and then try to build it back together, and you'll have a higher chance of success at doing it. And if you are successful, there was a gnome there who is like, hey, thanks for helping me, I'll join your side.
Awesome.
And so that's something you could totally miss. So there is a lot of freedom as well. There was a maze, so you have to go and you have to fight trolls. So you're under threat by these pretty nasty trolls, and trolls, you want to use acid or fire against them. And so you go to this mage who's researching trolls, and he gives you information, but you also see that he's been cruelly torturing a troll.
Whoa.
And so if you have a good party member there, they're like, hey, no, we can't stand by this. And so you can make a decision to free the troll and attack the mage, or just be like, no, keep doing what you're doing.
Will the troll join your party?
The troll doesn't join your party from what I've seen, but it's just another example of you getting to define your character's alignment, having that choice reverberate with your other party members. So a lot of stuff that you have seen in like Divinity or Pillars of Eternity, similar sort of systems at play here.
That's cool. Like the trolls will hear that you saved one and maybe
right. So that could have like
on you.
That could maybe have. I didn't get to see it play out, but maybe that could have a consequence further on in the quest.
10 hours down the line or something, yeah.
But yeah, it really seems like the biggest thing here is building up your kingdom and how that's going to change.
Is that kind of the end game goal, is to just rule the kingdom, build the kingdom, or is there another like outlying objective outside of the kingdom?
It's a good question. It seems like the kingdom building is kind of in conjunction with the main story, so it's not just like... It seems like you're going to have other forces at play, so maybe it starts out where it's like, okay, I want to rule these lands, but depending on how you interact with the people that approach you, that try to take you over, that try to do diplomacy with you, so politics and diplomacy are going to be a big part of it as well. Your kingdom, basically your throne room, your capital, will physically change as well. So depending on the type of ruler you are, you will see that reflected within the capital itself. And I thought that was
so if you're
cool.
evil, there's like heads on pikes.
Sure, something along those lines. I didn't get to see it physically change in the demo itself, but that was something that I was told.
And do you get different benefits too from building up the town? Like, build a blacksmith, or is it more large scale rather than, I'm going to build a shop or a blacksmith or something?
Sure. Again, I didn't get to see all the intricacies of it. Basically, I just made one choice of us. We didn't have a lot of guards on hand, and so I got to make the choice of where are we positioning these guards right now within our kingdom. But in terms of like what you're going to get access to, I don't know. If you're going to get some sick blacksmiths or something like that, it seems likely, but I'm actually not sure right now. Yeah.
Base building, town building.
It seems cool. It's cool that they're making this type of game with the Pathfinder name and using that rule set. Excited about that. I also saw, speaking of Pillars of Eternity, I saw Pillars of Eternity Complete Edition on console, and I got to play that on Xbox One. And there's not much to say other than it seems like they're doing a really good job with this. The text and the UI are much bigger, very easy to navigate on a controller. And it just seems like they're doing smart things that make that world make sense with a controller. Like a lot of times in Pillars of Eternity, it's like, okay, I can interact with this sign, or I can loot this thing, or hit this button, and it's all like very close to each other. And so what you can do is you can hold down the A button and rotate the analog stick, and it will change from item to item. So you can very specifically select, hey, this is what I want to do. And it looked really good. Just moving around felt good. And it includes the DLC.
Yeah, I remember when Diablo 3 came to consoles, and there were some skeptics of it, like, how is that going to work on console? And it's awesome with a controller. Some people prefer using a controller, and it just opens up the game to an entirely new audience that has missed Pillars of Eternity the first time around, and now they get, like you said, the DLCs, so they get the whole package.
Yep.
Sounds perfect.
Having played that game a ton on PC, as I was playing it on Xbox One, I was like, this is a totally fine way to play this game.
Perfect.
Like, if this is your only way to play it, or like you prefer to play with the controller on your couch or something, like you're definitely not missing out in the 15 minutes that I got to spend with it. Cool. And then Deadfire, the sequel to Pillars of Eternity, I didn't get to play this.
This subtitle first freaks me out, Ben. It's so confusing. It's like, am I playing
No, it's a direct sequel. Nope.
Am I playing,
Deadfire is a direct sequel. It's set in a really cool location. It's sort of in this tropical isle, which is pretty neat. Nice. And they didn't, like I said, I didn't get to play, but they did a gameplay demonstration, and they're doing a ton with this game. I mean, just visually, if you compare it to the first Pillars of Eternity, I think already it looks like a major step up.
Is this coming to console as well at launch, or later down the line?
No, I think it's just the PC at first.
Cool.
But in terms of visuals, in terms of mechanics, it seems like they're adding a ton of new things. Another thing that you can do is this Empower system, which I think is really cool. Basically, with Empower, you have this pool of points, and once per encounter, you can spend one of these points to either make one of your spells stronger or basically refresh a spell. So normally, like, if you use a spell, it's like, okay, I have to wait to get this back. You can refresh it again with this Empower point. The enemies, they also showed off this Titan, And this was just a huge towering enemy. And what was cool about it is it was doing a bunch of things. Like it would pick up a party member and like hold it in its hands up in the air, or kick a party member and knock it down. And just, you know, a lot of times with these style of games, you just are sort of running at each other and whacking at each other and casting spells, but it's all taking place on like a fairly level playing field. And so seeing it just change your position or lifting you up in the air was a really cool thing to see. The last thing that I really want to drive home with Deadfire specifically is the ship. So before, you spent much of Pillars of Eternity building up your stronghold, building up your castle. Well, this god comes at the beginning of Pillars of Eternity 2, destroys the castle, and you go chasing after him, and your boat becomes your new stronghold. And over the course of the game, you can modify your boat. It's how you get around. You can hire crew members and delineate tasks to them. And so I really like the idea of this mobile base. And you'll encounter other ships.
Tropical Island too,
right.
Pirate vibes.
Right, and you'll encounter other ships and you can attack them and you can board their boat, which is really cool. You'll find things as you're sailing. And so a thing that they were kind of driving home is that, like, because you're on this boat, you'll have a little bit more freedom of movement, and you might just come across like, oh, there's a derelict ship, let's go investigate it, and that unravels into its own thing. And it's cool. Saves will carry over, so you're playing as the exact same character you're playing as the Watcher from Pillars of Eternity 1.
Banner Saga style.
Your save will carry over from the first game into the second game.
Perfect.
Which is really cool.
Love that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
When's that come out? When's the release date?
I don't think we have a specific release date yet for Pillars of Eternity 2.
How about the console version?
We do have it for console. I don't have it written down. That is something I should have written down that I don't. I think it's pretty soon. I think it's like August or September. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, that's I like the saves carrying over, especially like they're giving console players a chance to kind of catch up for 2, you know. It's not necessarily launching on console right away, but you know, you go through Pillars 1 and then you just patiently wait for number 2.
Right. Yeah. Does anything in Deadfire sound particularly exciting for you, or does the console version make you want to jump in? Or
I like the movable base and the location. I think a tropical island is somewhat underutilized for this type of game. It's usually icy mountains or volcanoes or just normal forests, but the tropical setting sounds really great.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to playing through it. I played a ton of the original Pillars of Eternity, and it was a great game. Obsidian did excellent stuff. I mean,
professionals.
There are things right now, I think, where we are with Deadfire that you don't really get to appreciate yet, where Pillars of Eternity 1, I mean, it was a fascinating world. The stronghold part of it was cool, but what really sells Obsidian games is the writing and the interaction between characters and your decisions and how many decisions you get and how those affect other people and how it changes the story. Like, Obsidian just nails that stuff.
These
so
games
completely.
should be bigger than they are, which
they
is
should
sad,
be.
You know, and I'm hoping that the console version does that, because you see that sometimes when a game does come to console finally in that huge market, it blows up. So
yeah, it's. When you say they should be bigger than they are, I really sympathize with that, because on one hand, I think, you know, they could kind of move away from the isometric style that they're doing and maybe like have this attempt at more mainstream success, but I like that they're not doing that. You know, Pillars of Eternity was a passion project. It was a huge Kickstarter. The people that did support it really wanted to see that type of game, and they're still staying true to that audience, which I appreciate. Yeah, I hope people do give it a chance. It's really cool.
Console version hype, it's coming.
Yeah, it's. I'm excited for the console version, one, because it will reach a totally different audience, but it's just like a perfect excuse to like, oh, it's on console, I'll dip back in. I'll refresh myself for Deadfire.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Well, thanks for sitting down and chatting with me, Huber.
For sure.
Peace.